As you look at your smart displays with the Google Assistant on board, you might notice a new tile that says to set an alarm. And while this is not a new feature, what is new is a whole new interface for creating and managing alarms on smart displays. This will allow you to manage the alarm volume directly, change the sound that comes out of the device, and include the lights in the room within a sunrise effect. You can manage the alarms on the smart display itself, but my favorite feature is definitely the fact that I can set the time to snooze. Hello Automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm Brian from Automate Your Life, and today we're going to walk through all the latest updates, new features, and new products with Google Home and the Google Assistant. The first thing we have to talk about is our video sponsor, SwitchBot. The fact that they create devices that are both reliable and can physically move gives us a whole new opportunity for automation in our homes. And that's without a lot of effort and without tearing your home apart. So you can check out the links down below, and just for being a subscriber of Automate Your Life, well, there's a coupon code down there for you as well. Google finally completed the transaction to buy Fitbit, and this means they've gone through all the regulatory processes that they had to in the EU, and now they own the company. In our last Google Home Updates video, what I showed you was that you could integrate the Google Assistant with Fitbit in a bit of a new way, and really what this boiled down to was just you being able to ask how much you slept last night, which wasn't very useful. However, it's pretty clear that there's a lot more going on here in terms of wellness, and this actually coincides with a new device that we're expecting out from Google. This will be a brand new version of the Nest Hub, and I do think that it will be a direct replacement, but what happened when Google went and filed for this device like they do at the FCC every time they're coming out with something is they actually asked for 180 days of silence from the FCC, and this means that they can't release certain documents that'll give us everything. Now, the actual date on that letter is July 1st, 2020, but Google didn't file it with the FCC until December 10th. So that gives them 180 days from there, and it puts us into the middle of this year. Anyways, I'll get back to the whole sleep function and wellness thing in a second. I promise this is all coming around. But what is going on here that is so interesting with this smart display is it has Zigbee on it, and that's a divergence from having Thread on the Nest Hub Max, and I think it all coincides with the new chip standard that will be coming out, the first revision, very soon. It also has Wi-Fi at both 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. We'd expect that out of any Google speaker or smart display. But the other thing that seems really strange is it has this frequency range around 58 to 63 gigahertz. And what we noticed in the past is with the Nest thermostat, the new one that just came out, and the Pixel 4, was that meant Soli was on this device. And that's where we start to get back into this whole wellness thing, because Soli can be used for gestures, but it can also be used to detect movement in a space. And that, in combination with, you think, the ultrasonic detection capability, plus the light sensor that has traditionally been on these devices, and the fact that it has a Zigbee hub and is expected to be able to pull from those sensors, means that this device should be able to tell when you're asleep. And how this comes full circle is that when you go back into that wellness section and you look in there, what you're going to find is the ability to display some of these personal health results on your smart displays, and you can actually pick them now. And so this is leading into an area where you have things like exercise, sleep, nutrition, all those kinds of things showing up as a card or as part of your smart display. One of my favorite features on those smart displays is the fact that I can display all of these Google photos of my family or friends or whatever I want on there. But recently I've found myself switching a few of those to a brand new feature. This new feature tells me right away what the weather's like, and that is because there's a Google Weather Frog. Now, this is the first animation really that we've seen go into these smart displays. It's a feature you can choose, and yeah, it changes based based on the weather. Now, the other thing I like about this is it's giving me 3 days worth of weather at the bottom, where I normally only get what the current condition is. In case you've been buried under all of the new cool tech that came out as part of CES, well then maybe you missed the fact that Google and Samsung have partnered pretty seriously on a number of fronts. And we talked about the Nest and SmartThings integration in previous videos, so I'm not going to go back through that. But we saw Google Duo show up on the new Samsung TVs, and on top of that, we'll see the Galaxy phones get some Google Assistant features because they're going to get the Messages app as something that you can load on there. But my favorite new integration between these two companies is definitely the Android Auto and Samsung SmartThings integration. Now, with Nest included in that, I can't pull up my live camera, but I can pull up devices simply from Samsung SmartThings, and with the Nest camera, I can see whether or not there's motion there. So you can do that, and you can see your thermostat as well. Plus, you can execute all these scenes and manage your Samsung SmartThings security system. This news connects two pretty great services, and the first is Google Assistant, which makes sense with this video, but the second is based on you having an Android phone. Now, there's an application called Tasker, and if you don't know what Tasker is, well, it allows you to execute all kinds of fancy automation on a phone or a tablet, and it allows you to do things like open up applications and much more complicated things than that. But what you can actually do is through the Google Assistant, now you can run tasks with Tasker. Now, there's a video down below in the links that I think you should put on your playlist of things to watch, because it will open up your world of Tasker with the Google Assistant, and you can start to create routines. One of the best features of many Google products is an Incognito mode, and this goes into some of their applications, and the best example I think is the Chrome browser. Now, what that allows you to do is to kind of hide away or shelter some of that activity, and I probably can't talk about what kind of activity that is without getting flagged for inappropriate content. And that's where the new guest mode actually comes in on the Google Assistant. Now, you can actually activate this with a voice command, and at that point it is no longer logging what it is you're saying to the device. So this is a great thing in terms of having people over to go ahead and use. But you guys know that one of my favorite sayings is that the devil's in the details, and it's the same thing with this guest mode. And when you turn it on, you can actually ask for more information about what this means and what it's doing. And there's a great example that the Google Assistant will actually give you, and that is if you're asking for things about Google Maps, well, that application would be logging what you're doing. So you have to consider that, and it's the same thing with third-party actions, just like the Tasker thing we talked about. Although I don't think they're logging anything, they potentially could, even when you're in guest mode. One of the things that was so interesting to me at both last year's and this year's CES was how Google was represented. And last year, you know, we saw them all running around in jumpsuits. They were basically a show. You got the crazy dancers and you get a gumball from them, and that was what they were at CES 2020. But at CES 2021, they were nowhere to be found unless you looked at the other vendor. So I'm going to walk through just a ton of new devices that were announced at CES with Google Home or Google Assistant integration. Now, we talked about Google Duo on the Samsung TVs, but TCL actually came out and said they would be producing a TV with Google TV, that operating system that's on the new Chromecast, on board. So you know you're going to be able to use Google Duo there, and what you'll need for that is our hidden tips and tricks video. Yeah, that was a plug. Not to be outdone, of course, Sony comes out and they say, well, we're gonna put Google TV on all of our new TVs, and that's a development I really like. Also, Sony put out some new speakers that we initially thought might be Google Assistant capable, but it doesn't look like it. But what they will have for sure is full Chromecast built-in capability, and that means you're going to be able to use them within groups. Speaking of audio, JBL actually came up with a whole range of headphones and earbuds that will work with the Google Assistant or have Google Assistant support. Now, the first one is called the Tour 1. There's also the Tour Plus, And they have a new soundbar called the 5.0 Multi-Beam that unfortunately won't have Google Assistant on board, but does support Chromecast. Now, I don't care if you're watching the hockey game or you're watching the next episode or version of The Real Housewives. Either way, a glass of wine's probably going to go pretty well with it. And while I don't really know why you'd want a voice assistant to pour you a glass of wine, the Albi Home M Plus can actually do that. And once you've drank too much wine, well, you're probably going to have to head to bed, and you want to soothe that headache with a little bit of a diffuser. Now, the new Aromio is both a light and a diffuser, and it's a Bluetooth speaker as well. TP-Link has always had great integration with Google, and so when they come out with new products, I know lots of you want to know. Now, the video doorbell that they came out with, initially it was thought that that would have 2K resolution. It only came out with the 1080p. But it does have an option for local recording, which is fantastic. Now, they also came out with a version of an outdoor camera and a pan tilt camera that do have the 2K video option. There's also an interesting product that TP-Link came out that is a smart dimmer, and what's different about this is it's basically going to sync your lights throughout the day to what time of day it is, and that wouldn't take Google Assistant integration, but you have that control as well. Speaking of cameras, there's a new camera coming out from a maker you've probably never heard of, and well, maybe you have heard of them. They're called GE, but now they have this whole fancy name called C by GE, a savant company or something like that. Anyways, their new camera is called Sync, and that's their new product lineup that will work with the Google Assistant. What's interesting about this is it's really the C by GE lineup that I saw last year at CES with Tech with Brett, and I was mildly impressed with some of the devices, but we've never had great reliability out of that. So while they've added a few new devices and rebranded, I'd be waiting for some of the reviews on this whole lineup before you go deep. There are new versions of the Eufy vacuums, including the L80, and there's that new S7 by Roborock, and both of those have Google Assistant and Google Home integration. I always like the lighting products, and some of my favorite lights at the show were from Twinkly. Now, they have a whole new lineup of products that look very interesting, and I hope to get a few. On top of that, the Colo Light Mix was the new version of the Colo lights. I think that that is a great competitor for Nanoleaf, and actually lots of the Twinkly stuff is too. One of the more interesting products from Samsung in a while is their Terrace TV, and this is because it's made to kind of go out on that patio. And I showed you guys in our main CES coverage a door sliding capability. This was from a company called Auto Slide, and they allow you to, with the Google Assistant, open and close the door, plus they allowed you to lock it actually with the Google Assistant as well. One product that I know many of you love is the Lenovo Smart Clock, and while I personally didn't love that device, again, I know a lot of you do, so when a new version came out from Xiaomi called the Mi Smart Clock, I was kind of interested. Its display size is just under 4 inches. It has the Google Assistant on board. It has a couple of far-field microphones on it, and the price comes out to 50 euros. Now, that's a little more expensive than the Lenovo Smart Clock, so we'll have to wait for some of the more details about this device to see whether or not it's something you should look at. Now, I had this issue a couple of weeks ago with my Chromecast with Google TV on it, and I was instantly pretty concerned because I've recommended this thing to so many people. I've loved the device since the start. I've created whole video series about it, and suddenly what I had on screen was a display that looked like the thing was toast, and it was actually telling me that the Android operating system was corrupt. The other thing it told me was to factory reset, and I've actually seen the recommendations online to do a full factory reset, but I want to tell you what I did, and this might have been a bit of a fluke, but I would try this before going through the full factory reset and full setup process. Now, when you hold the button on the back of the Chromecast, it will go through a bit of a sequence, and it starts to blink yellow, and then if you hold it long enough, it'll turn white, and that means you're into factory reset time. But I stopped before getting to that white solid light, and what actually happened was when I just unplugged it and replugged it back in, the thing just came back online fully. Everything was there. I had to do nothing. Now, my Pixel phone has Android 11, and that still feels like a pretty new operating system, but there's already some new details coming out about Android 12. The first feature I want to tell you about is the one I find the most interesting, and it's something that was expected to have been part of Android 11. And what this is a bit of a different gesture support, and that gesture is the double tap on the back. Now, there's some restrictions on how it will be employed that will make sure that it's a little more accurate than your average double tap, because obviously that's a pretty easy thing to accidentally do on the back of a phone. So they're going to make you register the command, and that means it'll basically learn a little bit of how you're going to do that. Now, it will allow you obviously to call up the Google Assistant, but it's going to allow you to do much more than that, and you're going to be able to pick from some other actions. This is a bit of a hard feature to describe, and I hope by the time it comes out on Android 12 that it's giving us even more options than it sounds like already. Now, what this is called is the limited network or the restricted network mode. When you turn on that mode, what's going to happen is you're going to stop all of the user installed applications on your phone or your tablet in this case from accessing the network or the internet. And on top of that, you're going to be able to pick from the system applications or the manufacturer installed applications. So you'll be able to say which ones you want to access the network and the internet in general. That new version of the Nest Hub that I talked about earlier in the video, you know what? That was part of my predictions video for 2021 and the Google Home systems. Now, that is actually the third prediction that I have seen come true already in 2021. So I'm pretty excited for you to go check out that video now, because you're basically getting a crystal ball for what you can do with Google Home in your home in 2021. So thanks for watching today, guys. Go check that out, and otherwise, don't hate, automate.